Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for the 2024 FHL Bank Pittsburgh Homebuyer Products webinar. I am Alexa Mascara, the Community Projects Manager, and I will be the host for today's webinar. Before we get started, this webinar and the information included within is intended for Federal Home Loan Bank of Pittsburgh member financial institutions only. If you are not a member, we do ask that you please close out of the webinar and refer to the FHL Bank website or firstfrontdoor.com for information regarding these and other programs. We also encourage you to reach out to participating lenders for more information. Today, we will cover the details about First Front Door and our new program offering, the First Front Door Keys to Equity Fund, or KEYS. While this presentation will cover the high-level components of the programs, the 2024 First Front Door Product Manual remains the core document that you should refer to for all additional details on First Front Door and KEYS topics. We also offer a full suite of recorded webinars, which are posted to our website. One of the last slides of this presentation will have the FHL Bank First Front Door web address and our contact information listed for your convenience. I'd now like to introduce Fred Banuelos, Business Development Manager, who will cover some housekeeping items and review some information on the FHL Bank System overview.
Thank you, Alexa. Again, my name is Fred Banuelos, and I would like to introduce you to the banking staff with us today. Tom Westerlin, Vince Moy, Fred Duncan, Bill McGettigan, and Megan Kreider. Over the years, First Front Door has provided several benefits to our participating members that we would like you to take advantage of as well. Some examples include stronger banking relationships with the first-time home buyers, improved market competitiveness, potential CRA credit opportunities, and enhanced mortgage product offering. This will be discussed further in detail by Vincent Moy later in this presentation. Today, we will also unveil our new Keys to Equity Fund, but more on that later. So before we begin, I would like to remind everyone that this session is being recorded. The link will be circulated to all registrants within a week. Also, if you have any questions during the session, please enter them in the Zoom question box feature. Questions will be answered at the end of the presentation. If there are any questions that we weren't able to answer on the presentation, we will follow up with you afterwards. So today's presentation is intended to cover the high-level components of First Front Door and the Keys to Equity Fund. It's a great review for seasoned users, and if you're new this year, we hope you can learn about how you can incorporate First Front Door and the Keys product to support your mortgage. During today's webinar, we will cover the items listed on this slide. Like in the past webinars, we will cover eligibility, how to apply, and finish up with the round information and steps to help you prepare for this year. Before we dive into First Front Door and Keys, I'd like to give some background information on the Federal Home Loan Bank system. The Federal Home Loan Bank of Pittsburgh is one of 11 banks established under the Federal Home Loan Bank Act of 1932. Our purpose is to increase the availability of credit for residential mortgage lending, as well as investment in housing and community development. Each Federal Home Loan Bank is independently owned and operated, privately capitalized, and organized as cooperatives. The Federal Home Loan Bank system is comprised of roughly 7,000 member institutions nationwide, and we at the Federal Home Loan Bank of Pittsburgh serve approximately 300 members chartered in our district of Delaware, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia. Our members borrow from the Federal Home Loan Bank when they need liquidity, and through this lending to our members, we generate earnings, some of which are used to fund our community investment products. All of our products are funded solely by the activity of our members and does not use any tax dollars. We are talking about First Front Door and Keys today, but I would also like to take a minute to review other community products available to members in 2024. If you're interested in learning more, please reach out to someone on our team to connect further. The products on the left are mandated by statute. The products on the right are considered voluntary and are approved by our board of directors. As members of the Federal Home Loan Bank of Pittsburgh, you will have access to all of these products. The first program I'd like to mention is our Affordable Housing Program, or AHP. The Federal Home Loan Bank is required by statute to contribute 10% of its net earnings annually to fund AHP. AHP then provides grants of up to $1.5 million for affordable housing development through a competitive application process. The Community Lending Program provides low-cost advances to our members to support economic development, such as financing for small businesses, infrastructure, and community development projects located in low and moderate income census tracts. Moving over to our voluntary products. Banking on Business and Banking on Business Inclusion and Equity Fund provides secondary loans to small businesses to spur economic development. Home for Good provides grants to projects, programs, and activities that support those who are experiencing homelessness or at risk of homelessness. Funding is provided by Federal Home Loan Bank and our 3 state housing finance agencies. Blueprint Communities is a program that provides local leaders with the tools to develop a long-term revitalization strategy for their communities. And lastly, the Voluntary Housing Grant Initiative provides additional funding to address affordable housing needs in Delaware, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia. More information on our community products can be found on our website, or if you'd like to discuss any of them, feel free to reach out to me or anyone of the Federal Home Loan Bank team. And with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Alexa to go over keys and first front door.
Thank you, Fred. So First Front Door, or FFD, provides first-time homebuyers with grants to go towards the down payment and closing costs of purchasing their first home. To qualify for the program, FFD homebuyers must be at or below 80% of the area median income as published by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD, which is published on an annual basis. And with our exciting changes for 2024, under the FFD product, when a homebuyer contributes a minimum of $1,500 of their own funds into the deal, they are eligible for a grant of $15,000. We are very pleased to be able to offer this increased grant amount to your clients this year, and we'll cover these details further in a little bit. We know that for most households, paying the monthly mortgage is not the hurdle to homeownership, but instead it's saving enough money for the closing costs that prohibits a lot of families from purchasing. Being approved for an FFD grant gives these families the security of an extra $15,000 while they search for their first home. In addition, you, the member, will provide the first mortgage financing for these home buyers. The next slide covers how the program works, and for most of you who are familiar with FFD, this process will not be changing. First, confirm that your institution is enrolled in First Front Door. If you're not, those application materials are on our website. This is a one-time enrollment, so once you enroll in the program, you do not need to re-enroll every year. Once the FFD round opens, members can submit homebuyer applications or reservations through the FFD online system. This is an online platform that we created specifically for FFD files that you will need access to in order to participate. Within 10 business days of a completed reservation request, FHL Bank will let you know if the homeowner received an approved grant reservation or if more information is needed. Reservations are good for 180 days, and in that time, the homeowner will secure a mortgage with your institution, find a single-family home for purchase, complete the required homeownership counseling, and close on the property. At settlement, you, the member, will advance the funds for the grant. Also within that 180-day window, the member will also request reimbursement for the grant by submitting the required documents through FFD Online in a disbursement request. To be qualified for the First Front Door program, the homebuyer must meet certain qualifications. First, they must be considered a first-time homebuyer. That full definition is located within our First Front Door product manual. Second, they must be income qualified. The total household income must be 80% or less of the HUD area median income adjusted for family size. One thing to note here is that FFD considers total household income, not just the income of the borrowers. So, live in partners, extended family, in laws, anyone living in the new home all count in that income calculation. This is one specific place that First Front Door calculates income differently than most underwriting processes. In addition, the HUD income limit we use is the county or state for which they currently reside, not where they plan to purchase a home. For more information on income limits and guidelines can be found on our income requirement webinar. Third, the homebuyer must purchase an eligible property. These properties cannot be investment properties or unsecured mobile homes. For example, if the borrower plans on purchasing a duplex with the intention to rent the other side, First Front Door funds are not allowed. Buyers can purchase one unit, but not the entire duplex if the intention is for investment. Prior to settlement, the homebuyer must complete homeownership counseling provided by an approved agency. That list of approved counseling agencies is on our website, and there are both in-person trainings as well as online. FHL Bank does not offer that counseling. Finally, homebuyers need to have some stake in the game, so the homebuyer contribution is required. As mentioned before, that requirement is changing for 2024. Starting this funding round, borrowers need to contribute a minimum of $1,500 of their own funds into the deal in order to be eligible for that $15,000 grant. This is no longer a matching requirement, so there is not a sliding scale of what amount the grant the homebuyer is eligible for. It's an all or nothing approach. If they don't contribute at least $1,500, they are not eligible for the grant in any amount. As the same for prior years, this contribution can come from items paid outside of closing, canned money deposits, gift funds, and any other funds that they bring to closing. Seller's assistance, member credits, gifts of equity, or other grants are not counted as part of that homebuyer contribution. FHL Bank does not layer on any additional underwriting requirements, such as living or buying in Pennsylvania, Delaware, West Virginia, specific credit scores, LTV ratios, or asset amounts. The next few slides will cover what is required of you, the member, in the transaction. So let's assume that your borrower has been approved for an FFD grant. Once they have an eligible reservation, they have 180 days to find and close on their home. When it's time for settlement, the member has a few requirements that need to be met prior to a successful funding. First, since this program is offered to you, our members, you also need to have some stake in the game. You are required to provide the first mortgage financing for the borrower. However, if your institution works with an affiliated mortgage broker who closes your loans, please reach out to us to discuss the possibility of a cooperation agreement. You will also be required to provide an additional concession to the borrower. This concession is some form of tangible and measurable financial contributions given to the borrower at closing. Acceptable concessions can include, but are not limited to, waived or reduced fees, lender credits, or reduced interest rates. Also, it is your responsibility to both provide the grant at closing and to ensure that the borrower met their contribution requirement prior to providing them that grant. If the contribution is not enough to meet the grant they were given, there is a chance that your institution could be out some money. Now, I do want to stop and focus on this for 1 second. With the change in homebuyer contribution for 2024, if that calculation is off and the borrower doesn't meet that $1,500 minimum contribution, we won't be able to reimburse you any of the grant funds that you have fronted. So at $15,000 a household, this is more impactful than previous years. So it's imperative that that contribution is checked thoroughly before closing. The FFD product manual outlines acceptable homebuyer contributions and what the calculation is, but please remember that any cash back to the borrower gets removed from that contribution calculation. Additionally, any cash back to the borrower over $250 is a regulatory violation. Regardless of how any other grant programs might work, if you're also using First Front Door, this regulation cannot be violated. So any cash back to the borrower over $250 must be applied as a principal curtailment at closing. And finally, ensure that each first front door recipient signs the first front door real estate retention agreement at settlement. This is a required 5-year retention agreement containing specific language to secure the FFD subsidy for each home buyer. This document can be found in the First Front Door product manual, on the product website, and at the bottom of the FFD online system. There's only one version currently accepted, and it has not changed since last year. In regards to the member requirements surrounding the real estate retention agreement, there are a few items within that document I want to point out. First, it's the member's responsibility to satisfy and release any agreements after the 5-year retention period is over. While the most current version of the retention document contains specific language that automatically expires the document after 5 years, please be advised that some counties will still require your institution to satisfy that document manually. While the agreement requires the borrower to stay in the home for 5 years, we know that these are real people with real lives, and sometimes they sell or refinance prior to those 5 years. When that happens, Federal Home Loan Bank will need to be notified as a potential repayment could be due or a subordination required. In a lot of cases, FHL Bank is notified of the sale or refinance directly from the borrower or title company and not from the member. When this happens, we do loop in contacts from the member to make sure everyone is on the same page. There is a repayment request form that needs to be completed by you and some information needed from the new lender or closing company, and then FHL Bank can complete the repayment calculation. So these next slides I'll be covering will be to introduce our new program offering, the First Front Door Keys to Equity Fund. FHL Bank is committed to diversity and inclusion at every level and in all of its business activities. And as such, the First Front Door Keys to Equity Fund, or KEYS, was created. KEYS is a voluntary program of FHL Bank that provides down payment and closing cost assistance to first-time minority homebuyers and first-time first-generation homebuyers. KEYS is structured like FFD, so the program is offered through participating FHL Bank members that provide first mortgage financing. The portion of KEYS that benefits first-time minority homebuyers is established as a special purpose credit program in accordance with Regulation B of the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, or ECOA. Special purpose credit programs allow lenders to maintain programs that offer special benefits to people who share a common characteristic, such as race or sex. Special purpose credit programs are explicitly authorized by ECOA, which otherwise generally prohibits offering different terms based on such characteristics. There are well-documented and persistent gaps in homeownership, and many minority and first-generation borrowers continue to face barriers to accessible, affordable home mortgage credit. KEYS is intended to address these barriers by providing eligible borrowers with grant funds that can be used towards the down payment and closing costs. This next slide covers the homebuyer qualifications for KEYS, and as you'll see, other than a few major items, the program will be structurally similar to First Front Door. First, the program is only offered to individuals who are first-time homebuyers and who also identify as a minority and/or a first-generation homebuyer. The definitions of both of these will be covered on the next slide. Borrowers will self-identify using an FHL Bank self-certification form, which will be provided at reservation. Additionally, the program serves households who make up to 120% of area median income. The income qualification process will be the same. We'll qualify the entire household. We use the same income documentation and income workbook as First Front Door, but it will go up to 120% of AMI. This change in income could open up your institution to a new market of buyers. We will still be using HUD income limits for KEYS, but we'll refer to the HUD home income limits, which go up to 120%. Income training materials will be posted to our website and provided via email within a week or so. The next enhanced benefits for KEYS participants are the homebuyer contribution, which is a minimum of $1,000 instead of $1,500, for a maximum grant of $20,000. So, similar to the new first front door requirements, the borrower must contribute at least $1,000 towards the purchase in order to qualify for the grant. Anything less than $1,000 would result in no grant. And finally, since KEYS was designed as a voluntary program, no real estate retention document is required to be executed. Because there is no retention, there is also no repayment requirement for that grant. This next slide has the full KEYS definitions of minority and first-generation homebuyer. I'll pause here for a moment, but I do want to note that borrowers only need to meet one of these definitions for eligibility. The next slide covers the major differences between first front door and KEYS. If it's not listed here, it means the program components are the same. For example, KEYS borrowers are still required to complete homebuyer counseling prior to closing, just like first front door. Members are still required to provide a concession to KEYS borrowers, just like first front door. And members must submit reservations and disbursements through the FFD online system, just like first front door. If I can direct your eyes to the last boxes on this slide, to participate in First Front Door, members must be enrolled using the First Front Door member enrollment and agreement forms. To participate in KEYS, members must first be enrolled in FFD and then also complete the KEYS member participation agreement. This slide covers the do's and don'ts for members who are signed up to use KEYS. Many of these come from the written plan and the regulation which defines how special purpose credit programs can be implemented. Do clearly inform the borrower that information is being collected to determine eligibility for KEYS and for no other purpose. Do communicate the enhanced benefits to your borrowers. And do save your signed member agreement and the written plan for CRA examiners if you're planning to seek CRA credit. Do not discuss KEYS eligibility with potential borrowers until your institution has signed and returned the KEYS member participation agreement. Do not ask which minority group a borrower belongs to if they identify as one. Our definition of minority includes all racial and ethnic minorities. Do not second guess or question self-identification. Do not base eligibility determinations on visual observation or surname. And do not ask if an applicant is a member of a different protected class. For example, don't ask questions about the borrower's religion. Members who are interested in participating in KEYS should first verify their FFD enrollment status. If your institution is not enrolled, please complete those forms, which can be found on our website. Once enrolled in First Front Door, you can then reach out and request the KEYS member participation agreement. If your institution is already enrolled in First Front Door, you do not need to enroll again. You can reach out to us using the First Front Door email to request that KEYS member participation agreement. That agreement can be completed prior to the round or during an open round, but must first be completed before you can offer the program and submit reservations for approval. Like First Front Door enrollment, by signing the participation agreement, it does not obligate you to use the program. I'm sure there are plenty of questions that came in while I covered those slides, but I do want to let the group know that we have a rather extensive FAQ document, which was shared in our initial announcement email, but will be circulated again. Additionally, the KEYS program parameters are outlined in the FFD product manual. Before we get into the information about the 2024 round, I want to pause for a moment to give Vince Moy, Business Development Manager, a moment to speak about the benefits of using First Front Door within your organization.
Thanks, Alexa. And we appreciate you giving us the opportunity to share in these positive changes with First Front Door, and also the wonderful introduction of the Keys to Equity Fund program. And to the participants, thank you for attending the webinar this morning. Little recap about 2023 in the campaign. First Front Door awarded funds to over 1,200 first-time homebuyers through you, our member providers. And since the program's inception, since 1996, First Front Door has helped over 20,000 first-time homebuyers, funding over $100 million in program funding. And many of you who are present on the webinar this morning are the reason for this tremendous impact. And we thank you for your past participation, and we look forward to your use of both of these programs in 2024. So we're about a month and a half away for another funding round opening on Tuesday, April the 16th. Therefore, I'm going to take the time to offer the following program benefits to encourage your continued participation in the program. First, allow me to address what Alexa already went into detail regarding the purpose of the first-time homebuyer program. The greatest challenge has always been for first-time homebuyers buying a home has been down payment and closing cost assistance. But in recent times, affordability has become an even more expensive due to the rise in interest rates for mortgages. And the last time that an average mortgage rate peaked above 7% was almost 11 years ago. So now this poses a great opportunity and time for us to utilize the program to make mortgages affordable for first-time homebuyers, as every dollar of assistance helps to make a big difference. And with the change, this positive change in the increased amount of the grant, First Front Door users have the opportunity to write down the mortgage points even more. And with the announcement of the KEYS program, this also gives your member institution the opportunity to serve a wider affordable housing market at that 120% of the area median income or below, serving minority first-time homebuyers as well as first-generation homebuyers. Secondly, the First Front Door program continues to be very, very easy to use, and it provides time for the financial institutions to qualify eligible borrowers and to obtain reservations towards obtaining the mortgage. Although these funds are only available on a first-come, first-served basis, members with qualified borrowers can access the program while funds last. Thirdly, a good number of our member providers use the First Front Door program in conjunction with their in-house and alternative first-time homebuyer programs. And complementing those programs provides many institutions flexibility in their approach to their local market. And also keep in mind that our members can sell these first liens of these mortgages to us via our MPF program. And this may also include loans done in conjunction with one of these grants. Please reach out to me or any of your assigned business development relationship managers for additional information about the MPF program. And lastly, enrollment continues to be very, very easy. Although we've made some positive changes, some things remain the same. Enrollment is very easy. And so if you have not already enrolled, reach out to Alexa or anyone on our team to do so, and we'll all provide the technical assistance so that you'll be able to access the program. So in short, FFD and Keys to the Equity Fund program helps to make the mortgage more affordable, and it's also easy to use and easy to enroll. And we look forward to working with you as you position yourself to take advantage of the program this year. Alexa, thanks for the time, and I'll throw it back into your hands.
Thank you for your insight, Vince. So now to the good stuff. So first and foremost, as mentioned, within a week or so, we will be sending an email to First Front Door users and webinar registrants with the new 2024 First Front Door and Keys product manual, the Keys FAQ, and links to the webinar recording. The 2024 funding rounds for both First Front Door and Keys will open on April 16th. And you can submit files as soon as the FFD online system opens, which is 6 a.m. For both First Front Door and Keys, all applications are submitted and reviewed within the FFD online system on a first-come, first-served basis. Because the programs are so competitive, we have to review these in order that they were submitted to us, so please schedule your closings accordingly. The 2024 first front door allocation will be $22 million, which is our largest allocation ever. The member limit is still 15% of the total allocation, which is $3.3 million. That limit will be lifted after 4 months of the round being open, pending funding availability. As the round progresses, we will be in touch with those members who might come close to hitting the limit. The 2024 Keys allocation will be $7 million, and there is no member limit for that program. Due to the competitiveness of the funds, I do urge you to review your files for completeness before you submit. Make sure you have all of the income documents scanned in, make sure the workbook is correct. This will help you get a faster review or approval. I do want to note a few more important items for 2024. Due to the ever-changing market, we are actually seeing more repayment requests due to borrowers obtaining home equity lines of credit. In these situations, you can still subordinate the lien when applicable, or we can calculate a payoff. However, HELOCs are not considered to be forgivable events as defined by our regulation, meaning the calculation for a payoff is a strict proration, and the borrower will definitely owe something back. If you're willing and able, please try and subordinate. Second, I want to touch base back on those member limits. So as mentioned, for first front door only, each member will be able to reserve 15% of total funds. This is based on approvals, not how many files are submitted to us. So once we approve that final file that takes you to the limit, no other activity will be accepted or reviewed. Finally, we understand that over the course of an application process, borrowers may have new household members added or need co-borrowers. If these individuals are not disclosed at reservation, we need to be notified as soon as possible because we have to recalculate their income. So, what can you do now to get prepared for April 16th? First, if you're not enrolled, that paperwork should be completed. If you're interested in participating in Keys, you will need to reach out to us directly for that agreement. It is not a public document. Once enrolled, please make sure you're testing your logins. If you haven't been in the system since last funding round, there's a chance you will be locked out and will need your password reset. Second, you can begin to market your FFD or Keys program availability. We have marketing material templates on our website that you can customize, but please note that some of the Keys information is for our member partners only and should not be shared outside of your institution. Those documents will have disclosures on them to call the attention to the private nature of the materials. I also suggest that any new First Front Door or Keys user practices how to complete the First Front Door income workbook before the round opens. Also, it would be helpful to create partnerships in your communities. 2 useful agencies to start with are your local homeownership counseling agencies and local realtors. This is especially important to members who want to use the program but are not seeing a customer base that meets First Front Door standards. Partnering can help generate new customers. And finally, please take advantage of the tools on our website and technical assistance available to you. Let us know how we can help you be successful with these programs. This slide contains our contact information, so I'll pause here for a moment before we jump to the questions and answers. You can always reach out to Fred and Megan, who are the Community Investment Business Development Managers, with questions or to set up a training, or you can reach out to your institution's primary business development managers, Tom, Fred, Bill, or Vince, to get started. When in doubt, please feel free to contact the First Front Door email, which is also listed here. As mentioned, please feel free to type your questions into the Q&A box and we'll take a minute to gather them. If we don't get to your question today, I will follow up directly with you via email by the end of the week. Feel free to throw some of those questions my way as the rest roll in.
Okay, sure. And we have a ton of questions, so I'll just say now that if we don't get to your question, we have logged everything, so we can also follow up with you outside of this. But I've also been answering some questions for the entire group, so Anybody should be able to go and see those answered questions. So Alexa, we have quite a few questions regarding the maximum grant amount. So I'm going to read one. If the borrower meets the $1,500 minimum required down payment contribution from their own funds, but they do not need the full $15,000 grant, can they receive less? And how would they go about, reducing that grant amount? And then I would also add on, if they don't need that full $15,000 to close, are there other options? Can it be applied to principal? Can it be used to write down the interest rate?
Yeah, great question. Thank you, Kate. So we always do recommend that members request the full amount of the grant at reservation. And then the borrower can use anywhere up to that maximum grant when they actually purchase their home. If they only need 10,000 or 8,000, absolutely they can use as much or as little of that grant as possible. To your second point, that these grants can be applied to any closing cost or down payment assistance, including writing down these interest rates. So we, in the current market, definitely recommend if there's extra funding or that helps your borrower more than a down payment would, please use the funds to write down those interest rates. I do want to, I'm sure this question came in, so I'll just continue on. Borrowers are only eligible for one of the grants, First Front Door or KEYS. They cannot be eligible for both. If KEYS funding depletes while the First Front Door program is still open, those borrowers can still register for First Front Door funds if they meet the requirements. So if they are under 80% of the AMI. However, they're only eligible for the $15,000 grant. We cannot fund that $20,000 under First Front Door. So again, just to recap, they can't combine. You can't be eligible for both First Front Door and KEYS. It's one or the other. If they're not eligible for KEYS because funding is gone, please try and register for First Front Door if they are eligible.
Thank you, Alexa. That actually was my next question.
Thought it might
So
be.
sticking with the homebuyer contribution and the grant, two questions. Does a gift of funds count towards the homebuyer's contribution? And what about the appraisal fee?
Gift of funds can definitely count towards the homebuyer contribution if it's documented on the CD. We need to make sure that those funds are going directly towards the home purchase. Gifts of equity do not count. So gift funds, yes. Gifts of equity, no. And then your second part of the question, was that in regards to the homebuyer contribution as well?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So any sort of fees that are paid outside of closing, so anything for the appraisal, for any other costs can be counted as that home buyer contribution. Again, as long as it's documented on the CD as being paid outside of closing.
Thank you, Alexa. Another common question was if there are two borrowers and only one individual qualifies for the KEYS program as a minority or first generation borrower, is that household eligible?
Yes. So only one borrower needs to identify as a minority, as any one of those bullets under minority, or as any one of those bullets under first generation. Only one borrower does. However, the household does need to qualify also as a first-time homebuyer household. So the household will need to qualify for that first, and then only one borrower needs to identify as a minority and or first generation.
Thank you. Sticking with the topic of eligibility for KEYS, is there any responsibility on the member to do verification of the documents submitted in the self-certification form, including confirming if somebody is a first generation buyer?
No, we do ask that like every other, conversation that you're having with your clients, we do ask that you do your due diligence when it comes to both First Front Door and KEYS. However, we provide the self-certification form for the client to complete, and you cannot question anything that is on that form.
Thank you. A couple income questions. So, Does the income of a minor need to be included in the household income? And does the income of a non-occupying co-borrower need to be included in the household income?
Both great questions. So we only count income for household members that are 18 and above. So anybody who's below 18 who makes money from working at a part-time job or what have you does not need to be included. Non-occupying co-borrowers, while we allow this in First Front Door and Keys, it's structured a little bit differently. So in the First Front Door income workbook, we will need to count the income of the non-occupying co-borrower, but we do not count their body count. So if you're familiar with the income workbook, that non-occupying co-borrower will not have their own tab. They will not be a household member. So essentially their income needs to be put on the main borrowers tab. In a lot of cases, this does put households over income because it looks like one borrower has multiple jobs. But if they are still under income with a non-occupying co-borrower, we allow it.
Great, thank you. For members who would like to get started collecting income documentation on their borrowers prior to the round opening, how soon can they start to do that? In other words, at submission, how recent must the income documentation be?
Yeah, so we ask that the most recent pay stub is within just a few months of round opening. So now is a great time to start reaching out to borrowers, or maybe you're already working with borrowers that you know would meet the qualifications of either program. So now is a good time for sure. Obviously, you can't submit anything for review or approval until the round opens in April. But please feel free to, start collecting those documents and having those conversations, with the caveat that you should not discuss Keys eligibility or the Keys program until your institution is enrolled. So if you're interested in offering that, please reach out for that participation agreement. We are reviewing and approving them as quickly as we can. Once you have an approved enrollment into Keys, then you can start marketing and discussing that program with your clients.
Thank you, Alexa. Can the FFD grant or the Keys grant be used in conjunction with other grants, and will FFD and Keys take a subordinate position?
Yes, so we absolutely encourage you to layer on as many grant programs that your clients are eligible for, with the understanding that we still have some program parameters and regulations that cannot be violated. So as long as using multiple programs together does not violate First Front Door parameters, absolutely, you can layer them on. The First Front Door Real Estate Retention Agreement does not have a required position. So that can be put into any position behind any other lien that does require a higher position.
Thank you, Alexa. Are there any changes to the FFD retention documents in 2024? And does FHL Bank have limitations regarding fees?
No changes to that real estate retention document from last year. It is the same one. We've used the same one for the past couple of years, so no changes. And we don't require any satisfaction or recording fees. So any of those fees that your institution determines they need to charge is just, what your institution charges.
Thank you. So when do you anticipate, currently HUD has published the 2023 limits as the most recent. When do you anticipate the 2024 limits will become available? And how will that work if a borrower perhaps is expected to qualify based on the 2024 limits, but not the 2023?
Yeah, so because we use HUD's limits, we're sort of at their release schedule. Typically they release in mid-spring. So if I had to guess, it likely would be mid to late April. So we will use the 2023 limits until those are posted. Once they do, once HUD publishes those limits, it does take us a little bit of time to format them for the FFD online system. So during that time where there's two sets of income limits out there, the First Front Door and Keys team will review all files. If they're over income for 2023, but under income for 2024 limits, we will hold those files. We will notify the member, and as long as the member says, yes, that's okay, please wait until 2024 is in the system, we will do that. Once the new limits are in the First Front Door system, then we will approve those files. And also, as it relates to income, this is probably also a question. I had mentioned before, keys goes up to 120%. We will be circulating and posting some training materials on how to find and calculate those 120% AMI limits. That should be also within a week. We've got a bunch of good information coming. We will circulate as much as we can via email. The rest of it will be posted to our website. As mentioned before, some of this information is private, so it won't be posted publicly on our website, but we will continue to circulate the materials.
Thank you, Alexa. Can this program be used in FHL Bank's district states or outside as well?
Both First Front Door and keys can be used to purchase properties anywhere in the country by borrowers who live anywhere in the country. As long as they are coming to one of our member institutions for their first mortgage financing, we have no stipulations on location.
What happens if funds are reserved for a home buyer, but they cannot find a home in 180 days? Are there options to extend?
Yes, we do offer extensions for borrowers who are still looking or have identified a home and just need some more time to close on the property and use the grant. In those cases, the member can just reach out to the First Front Door email and request an extension. We have an extension request form that needs to be completed, and then we can approve that, and we'll give that grant some more time.
Thank you. What happens if the grant is refinanced within the first 5 years?
So if the grant is refinanced, there are two options. The member can agree to subordinate that lien. So again, we can take any position in that refinance. If your institution agrees to subordinate, or if you don't want to subordinate, or the client no longer wants to have the lien on the property, that repayment form will need to be completed, and we will calculate any potential repayment.
Thank you, Alexa. Just one more question, and then I think we can wrap up and answer the rest of the questions offline. Can you just generally talk about how long does it take for the buyer to receive funds once they have an approval?
Yeah, so well, to receive the funds or to be reviewed for. So we operate on a 10 business day review time. So when a complete application is submitted to us, we will review and either approve or deny the file or send it back for clarification within 10 business days. So after the approval, once a home buyer has an eligible reservation, they do have that 180 days to find their home, close on their home, and that you, the member, request the reimbursement from us. Okay, I think that was all the time we have today. So I really appreciate everybody joining. If your question wasn't answered or you have additional questions, please feel free to reach out to us. Again, First Front Door email, firstfrontdoor@fhlb-pgh.com. Pretty easy. I again appreciate everybody's time and look forward to 2024.